In a mastery-based learning classroom, there are several decisions that need to be made by the school leaders and their teachers. Schools should have a curriculum map to follow. A curriculum map should be laid out with what units the teacher is to cover and when. This should ensure that teachers have the information they need for guidance and direction. Next, schools should also know what essential skills are being built with the daily instructional processes within each unit. These essential student skill sets shall align with the national and international tests like the SAT. Next, how students are going to be evaluated is important as well. Are they going to be evaluated informally through formative assessment or more formally through documented tests, rubrics, and quizzes? How are we going to add descriptors to the grading scales? Is it going to be generic or is it going to be descriptive for every subject? And finally, are students able to progress? Can their grade be increased as they get better at a topic? Mastery of a topic takes time, so giving students the ability to learn, relearn, and even revise. When you lay out the curriculum map, there are several things you want to consider. You should consider using generic numbers of days or weeks so you do not have to revise it all the time. Look at your textbooks for initial guidance. Companies lay out the curriculum for you in units of instruction. Remember, a book like this contains related information. How and when you use it is up to you and your staff as to address the needs of your school, but it's a good starting point. Ask your teachers to contribute to the conversation. Use documentation tools in which you can share, revise, and even collaborate on the document itself. When ensuring that your students have the necessary skills to compete on an international or national test, schools and teachers shall do an intensive study of that particular test. It is imperative that schools do lesson studies on tests such as the SAT and your homeland tests of ranked students. Students have to compete for admissions at top universities, so it's vital that a school's instructional practices are building a proper student skill set to compete. It is recommended that teachers within their content area study test-released items or related study guides in order to become experts themselves. Students should also seek tutoring and community supports as their test ranking is an early indicator to narrow down the list of university applicants for the universities to manage and also evaluate. Well-written grade descriptors are an essential tool in helping students to understand the marks that they've been awarded and why they've been awarded them. They also help inform what students need to do in order to achieve higher marks in the future. The language used in grade descriptors needs to be clear, consistent, and helpful. Grade descriptors, along with their intended learning outcomes and formal and informal feedback, are cornerstones in helping to articulate students' learning and progression, and are also helpful to external stakeholders such as potential employers. An assessment's intended learning outcomes should therefore be designed and written with grade descriptors in mind. And in turn, the language and terminology used in the grade descriptors should be consistent with that used in any feedback given to students on their performance. Here's some helpful tips in writing a grade descriptor. 1, they need to be easy to understand, and the phrases should be meaningful and also useful. They should also be consistent, particularly across assessment types and disciplines. They should not include absolute terms on either end. For example, a perfect or flawless really implies that it would be impossible for any other improvement. They should be linked to relevant intended learning outcomes and be consistently used in any feedback given to students in their performance. Let's get started building the mastery component within your unit. Step 1. Let's ensure that you know what you're going to teach. So please lay out the units and how many anticipated days it will take for each one. Step 2. List the most essential skills that you're building within each unit. Please use your textbook or common resources as a helpful starter. Also make sure that the skills and information you want your students to master is aligned with the expectations on a standardized test like the SAT. If you teach a course as an elective, how can you build those essential skills as well? How can you deepen a student's understanding through your subject area? Step 3. List out your essential vocabulary that is needed. Step 4. How are you going to evaluate a student's understanding? Is it through a test or a quiz or a series of informal assessments? Step 5. When grading, are you going to use a grading scale, letter scale, or level scale? How many different categories are there within the scales? In step 6, what is the gold standard for students? If a student has mastery of the skills, what do we generally observe? In step 7, once you set the gold standard, describe what you may see at other levels that are not quite at the gold standard.